Okay, picking back up with number 14, we have, in the numerator here, we have to factor the v squared plus 13v plus 36. And so we need factors of 36 that add up to 13. And so that would be 9 and 4. So we have v plus 9, v plus 4. Okay, so to check yourself on this, you look 9 times 4, is that 36? Yes. And then we'll have a 9v from here, 9 times v, and then plus 4 times v is equal to 13v. So we know that we factored it correctly. And then in the denominator, we have a greatest common factor we can take out. They're both divisible by 7. And then they also have a v squared in common. Okay? So if you have a variable in both terms, you can just factor out the lowest power, or the variable with the lowest power. So 7v squared. And you're left with v plus 3. And then since we're dividing, we need to flip this this fraction over here and multiply. So we multiply by the reciprocal. V squared minus 9, that's what's going to go in our numerator now, so we need to factor it. It's the difference of two squares, so it's v minus 3 times v plus 3. Another way to think about it is factors of negative 9 that add up to 0, because there is no middle term, so it's just 0. So negative 3 times 3 gets you negative 9, and then negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And then in the denominator we have a v minus 3, which is already simplified. So now, since we're multiplying, we can just look at our factors and see what we have in the numerator and what we have in the denominator. So I can see right here I have a v minus 3 divided by a v minus 3, and that equals 1, so I can divide those out. I have a v plus 3 and a v plus 3, so those divide out as well. And all I'm left with is v plus 9 times v plus 4 over 7v squared. And now, if you may notice that the factors from the numerator up here in the first fraction, neither one of those would simplify with anything else. And so as you look at it, you may think, well, did I have to do that? And no, you really didn't have to do that. But until you factor it, it's hard to know if you're going to have a similar factor or a common factor in the denominator that you can cancel out. All right, number 15. We got a factor again. And this time in 15, we have a leading coefficient that isn't 1. And so it's a little more cantankerous or difficult to factor, but I'm going to do it with a way called bottoms up, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. And I'm going to do it that way because I think it's a little simpler and a little faster than factoring by grouping. But it's the same principle. It's just applied in a different way. So we're going to multiply 2 by negative 15. We get negative 30. Factors of negative 30 that add up to our middle term, negative 1. So that would be negative 6 and a positive 5. Okay, so let's go ahead and write our v. I'm leaving a little space in front of those v's in case I need to do the bottoms up part. And just like we always do, even if the leading coefficient wasn't 1, I write minus 6 and v plus 5. Okay. Now, I can't forget about my leading coefficient, my 2. So both of my factors here, I'm going to divide them by 2. Now if they divide out evenly, like this one, 6 divided by 2, 6 divided by 2, that is 3. So I write v minus 3. But what about the 5 over 2? That doesn't simplify. And so I'm going to, bottoms up, I'm going to bring the 2 up next to the v. And now it's factored. And I can already see here that in the denominator I also have my 2v plus 5. So those are going to divide out. Alright? That's being multiplied by another thing that doesn't have a leading coefficient of 1. So 5 times negative 10 gets us negative 50. I need factors of negative 50 that add up to 23. That's a positive 25 and a negative 2. So I'll write v, leaving a little space, plus 25 times v minus 2. Divide both of those by the leading coefficient 5, and if they divide out evenly, like the first one, then I go ahead and do that, so v plus 5. Now negative 2 over 5, that doesn't simplify, so I bring the 5 up. And I get 5v minus 2, and that's factored. Alright, now we move into the denominator, 25v minus 10. Greatest common factor. A factor that both of these terms have in common. Something I could divide both of them evenly by. 25 divides by 5, and so does 10. So I factor out the 5. And I'm left with 5v minus 2. And that's handy. 5v minus 2, 5v minus 2. I'm out of space, so I'm going to write the answer up above this. But you can see the pieces that are left. We have a v minus 3 times v plus 5 over 5. That's all that's left. Alright, last one. Color switch. Number 16. Okay, number 16. What can I factor out of the numerator? I have greatest common factor. Let's see, 8 can divide by 4 and so can 20, so let's try that. I'll divide that by 4, and then they both have an n as well, so 4n. That leaves me with a 2n in here. So 4 times 4 gets me the 8, n times n gets me the n squared. Minus 4 times what gives me 20n? That's a 5. Okay, then I'll look at the denominator. Also has a greatest common factor. Same greatest common factor, 4 and n. But this time in the parentheses I have a 5n plus 2. Awesome. 4n divided by 4n is just 1, so I can divide those out. Now, I'm dividing. To make sure to pay attention to that. And I want to multiply. So I have to multiply by the reciprocal. So in the numerator is going to be this 5n squared minus 3n minus 2. But I want to factor it. So I multiply the 5, the leading coefficient, by the constant term. I get negative 10. I need factors of negative 10 that add up to negative 3. That would be negative 5 and 2. So I'm going to write n and n, so n minus 5, n plus 2, but I have to divide, oh, I didn't leave enough space. I have to divide both of them by 5, because that's my leading coefficient. Okay, the first one's going to divide out, but the second one's not, so that's where our bottoms up comes into play. And let's see, I'll just erase these. Alright, so this is going to become a 1. And minus 1. And this is going to become, since the 5 comes up in front of the n, it's going to be 5n plus 2. N minus 1, 5n plus 2. All of that's being divided by 6n minus 15. Well, what's the greatest common factor there? Looks like a 3 will factor out. So 6 divides by 3 twice, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. Okay, so I see a 2n minus 5 here and a 2n minus 5 here. I see a 5n plus 2 here and a 5n plus 2 here. And it looks like all I'm left with is n minus 1 over 3. Call that one quits, and we'll pick up with number 17 in the next video.